Welcome to our third installation of the Experts Corner webinar series. This week we'll be doing a webinar on technology solutions for monitoring and evaluation. And our presenter today is Chris Wood. Now this webinar series is part of the Marketplace website. This is Marketplace. This is a new website from the Youth Employment Network. And on the website you can find a series of webinars about monitoring and evaluation, as well as a ton of other resources for youth employment practitioners and organizations, as well as young entrepreneurs. So we invite you to log on to the Marketplace and take a look at some of the resources we have for you there. Now, our presenter today is Chris Wood. Chris has many years of experience in consultancy and management roles across multinational corporations, small businesses, charities, and startups. Chris built an international organization from scratch to address employment issues in the UAE with a £7 million funnel within 2 years and transferred management responsibilities to UAE nationals. He worked with British and UAE governments and members of the royal families. Chris designed the regional symposium, which included 250 people, based on an open innovation model to identify real projects to address youth employment issues across the Middle East and kickstart the project. Chris is focusing on bringing clarity and simplicity to M&E by developing new solutions such as Improved, a web mobile solution to make data collection, management, and analysis easy. Chris is currently working on projects in the UK, Europe, and the Middle East. So I'll pass it over to Chris now, who will be giving the presentation today.
Hello everybody. Measurement and evaluation is about collecting and analysing data. And I believe there's two reasons for collecting data. The first one is to make sure we are doing the right thing. That means are our actions and activities actually creating the right impact on the beneficiaries that we're trying to serve? The second one is, are we doing things right? Are we delivering our projects in a way which is most effective, most efficient, and best use of potentially our donors' money, but certainly our resources and time? And it's balancing those two reasons for collecting data that drives us to look at different channels, different ways of collecting data. When we're collecting data, we need to concentrate on three things. The first part is the collection. The next part is moving that data to where we want to analyze it, the transfer piece, and then there's actually analyzing the information. Just as a simple example, if we look at paper, a lot of NGOs collect information on pieces of paper. They then put it in the back of a car or something like that, and then take it to a central office where it is generally typed in to some kind of computer, probably a laptop, probably on Excel, and then analyzed on Excel. That's a simple example to show you the collect, transfer, and analyze. Other technologies allow you to use SMS, for instance, where you use a simple mobile phone and the mobile networks to transfer the data directly from the phone to the laptop. Smartphones and the new technologies that are advancing in the mobile space allow you to collect more than just simple characters from SMS, but other things like photos, potentially videos, and be able to transfer those as data directly into the laptop. And the final example is to use the web directly. You've probably filled in forms on the internet. Those collect data, directly transfer them to a central point where they can be analysed as you need to. Now let's have a look at some possible solution providers in those spaces. We're still looking at the collect, transfer, and analyze. There are some companies who focus on paper, some on the mobile space, and some on the web space. All of these companies have great solutions, but I'd just like to pick out just a few of them to give you an example of how they work and what they can do. Within the SMS space, there's an organization called Frontline SMS. They provide a free application which provides two-way SMS interaction from your beneficiaries into a database on a laptop or computer. There is no internet connection required for this, and that means that you can tap into your beneficiaries or your volunteers out in the field that can then collect data directly on their phones and send it straight into a database between SMS and smartphone. Again, this is a free application. It's designed to work on a smartphone, and you can design your questionnaires, surveys or forms on their internet site and then deploy them onto the device, onto the smartphone. When you use the smartphone, you can then collect the data offline if you need to, so somewhere where there's no mobile signal, and the data that's collected is sent right back to an online database. The next one I'll talk about is SurveyMonkey. This is an online forms or questionnaire system. It's incredibly flexible, very powerful. It allows you to create your questionnaires, put them onto the website, and allow beneficiaries or anybody you like really to come and enter their details into the forms. The collected data is then downloaded directly into the SurveyMonkey database. You have access to some reporting facilities and ways of getting the data out of SurveyMonkey so that you can do your own further analysis. And the final one I'll talk about is Google. Google have a great selection of tools that are available. They're free, they're very flexible, you can do an awful lot with them. They're only available online. They will need a bit of configuration, you need to learn how they work. But once you tap into the power of Google and the fact that they are free, they become a great resource. However, each point solution has its pros and cons. They have some great points. They're very clever at what they do, and they're very good at what they do, and they focus on that specific piece. But against them, there are some downsides. So if you look at paper, it's easy to use and it's pretty cheap if you take out the printing costs maybe. However, if you're taking paper surveys rather, to a project site, and you imagine you're surveying, let's say, 100 beneficiaries and doing pre and post surveys, I've had stories where these completed forms are then put on a truck to go back to the central office, and it's rained, and some of the papers got blown away, and then they get to the office and somebody has to try and read those bits of information in the pencil or the pen they've been written in, and then transpose them into a database. So there's issues all the way along the supply chain for the data in that sense, and data tends to get lost or changed through that route. The web surveys, again, very easy to use, very cost effective. The problems that I've found is that if you run a survey, let's say a pre-assessment, and then you want to run a post-assessment, it's quite difficult to link the two surveys together for that individual person. You need to think very carefully about the design of your surveys in order to make that information so that you can connect it later on. It doesn't do it automatically in the applications. SMS is quite an interesting technology. There are applications out there excuse me, which allow you to create a receiver for your SMS, but that receiver would expect the SMS message to be in a very particular format. Therefore, it's not very convenient for beneficiaries to use, but it can be used by volunteers that you send out to the field who understand and have been trained on how to compose these messages. If you're looking at cloud databases, as I said before, they're very scalable, very configurable, multi-user, they're great at what they do. However, they're quite complex to set up and manage, so you need to be aware of the effort you're going to have to put in to design and maintain these data collection databases of collecting data. They are a database, and therefore they need some way of putting the data into them, which again requires careful design. And I know a lot of NGOs have created their own systems, whether it's using Excel or maybe Access, something that's based on the internet, using some of the more advanced technologies. The things to be aware of there is that you need to purchase and maintain the hardware. You also need to maintain the software and do things like backups yourself. So there are some difficulties involved in that. And one of my favorite sayings is, free software does not cost nothing. I'll just explain that. If somebody gives you a free lunch, it's free. You get the lunch, you consume it, and it's gone. End of transaction. If somebody gives you a puppy, it seems like it's free, but it's going to cost you a lot of money over its total lifetime. So when you're considering technology for measurement and evaluation, there's a series of questions you need to ask yourself. What data do you need to collect? Are you looking at quantitative data, which is numbers? You count things. You're looking at answers to closed questions like yes or no, or please select from a list of these possible answers. Or are you looking for qualitative information, where you want to collect free text, so the beneficiary can write anything into the collection field? Or what about video and audio? How complicated do your questionnaire forms need to be? Do you need conditional branching? What that means is that if you have a question that says, please answer yes or no, and depending on whether they answer yes or no, you provide them with a different set of questions. Do you really need that? Do you really need that for M&E purposes? You need to ask those questions before you start designing your data collection systems. The next question is, who's going to do the collection? Is it a trained person, somebody who will go into the field and collect that data on your behalf? Or can it be anyone? Can it be any beneficiary? I've always recommended using a trained person or a volunteer. They can interpret the questions and make sure that the beneficiary understands that question in the context where they are right now. The volunteer can also interpret the response. If you've got closed questions like yes and no, or please select from a scale of 1 to 5 what you think, the volunteer can help interpret those answers, which will come back as a story, and put them into the closed question rankings. The volunteer is also able to use more complicated data collection tools. Let's say you've created an M&E system which uses an iPad, for instance. You can't expect all your beneficiaries to have an iPad, but you could get your volunteer to use an iPad, so they can handle a bit more complexity. Do you want the beneficiaries to be able to provide feedback themselves? If so, what is the best way for them to do that? How can you capture data from the beneficiary at any time of the day or night that is easy for them to use? And if you open it up to the beneficiary, how do you know who they are? I've heard cases of where web forms have been created and opened up to the general public. Please give us your answers to these questions. And there's always somebody out there who wants to cause some mischief and starts to fill in the form 100, 200, 300 times. It's a form of spam. Just be aware of that. The next question is, where are you going to collect the data? If you're in an urban situation, it's likely that you'll have technology around you. You'll have a good mobile signal. You'll probably have internet connection. If you're out in the field, a long way away from technology provision, consider how you're going to get that information that you collect back to the place that you analyze. Remember the story of the truck loaded with data when it rains. One of the trends at the moment is to try and collect the location of the data that you collect. Where was it captured? GPS has used this a lot. But ask yourself, is this really useful? Is this something that's really going to add to your M&E system? There's lots of mapping tools available that once you've collected the coordinates, you can then plot it onto a map and see where the responses are coming from. But you have to be careful about the quality of that information. I've heard stories where a volunteer will go into the project site, collect a lot of data and save that as draft, and then go back to the coffee shop in the local town, update that data or complete some missing fields, and then save it. The data that's going back to the database is the GPS location of the coffee shop, which is not much use to where the project site is. How quickly do you need the information to reach you? Do you want immediate information? As soon as it's collected, you need to analyze it and be able to act on that information in real time. Or can you accept delays in that transmission? So you want to collect your data, and then when 90% of the data has been collected, you can then analyze that in the longer term. How do you want to manage the entire project process? Generally, when you're collecting M&E data, you're also collecting data which is very useful to manage your project. You can use it to monitor and track the progress of your delivery. and actually do project management from that same information. Don't collect it twice. And finally, how many bits of data are you going to collect? I'll come on to that in a few minutes. I'd like to try and bring this webinar to life by explaining a case study that I've been involved in recently. This is in Kuwait. They have a summer program where they invite students to apply to join the program. They then select 500 students who do a 6-week paid internship with the local company. They also do some community service and work in group activities to engender teamwork. They have a group of supervisors or volunteers who support the students and work with the companies and make sure the whole thing runs smoothly. They also have implemented a point system where the students collect points on all the activities they do, and then the best ones get awarded certificates at the end of the day. For the M&E projects that I've been involved in, I always like to draw what I call a process flow. It shows in a graphical sense what the project does and how it's going to work. And in the LOIAC case, they apply to the project. They then use the interview process to filter out those students and select the best 500. The ones that are selected then go into the project proper, and they do a work experience session of 6 weeks with the company, and they also attend regular group meetings. At the end of the 6 weeks, they will attend an exit interview to find out how it went and what else can be done. And the ambition of the whole project is that these students will get employed. Now obviously during the application and the interview process, there's people who will be rejected and not invited onto the program. We're going to use that group as the counterfactual to understand what happened as a result of the environment, which has not been taken into account by the change seen in the project. So we're looking at the counterfactual as well to be able to measure the impact that we're having. So at the application stage, we're looking at who are the beneficiaries. At interview, we're collecting a piece of information about motivation and competence as part of our baseline. During the work experience, we're looking to record their learning and behaviour, both from the company's perspective and the student's perspective. During the group meetings and their community service, we're looking to collect commitment data on the students so we can award the points fairly. We're also inviting the students to provide feedback at any time during the project about their experiences. At the exit interview, we want to collect the motivation and competence data again so that we can do an immediate pre- and post-assessment. We're also looking for long-term, 6 months down the line, we'll collect that same information again so we can do a longer-term study. Now data collection can be frightening. I'll just give you a few numbers. In the LOIAC case, we've got 2,000 applications coming in online, which they accept 500 students. So that means the demographic data we collect at the front, there's going to be 2,000 completed questionnaires. We then need to measure before, during, after and long term of the program to analyse the personal changes. So some quick maths, that says 500 students times 4 times plus a counterfactual is about 2,500 forms. We also want to invite feedback from the companies in particular and any ad hoc feedback from students. So again, there's another 100 forms. And finally, we want to measure the commitment using the point system. And you can see now that the numbers of forms starts to add up quite dramatically. Overall, that means there's over 90,000 data points. If you tried to put that into Excel, you probably could and try and manage it that way. But I think you'd start to run out of brain capacity after a while to understand what goes where and how to manage it. And this is an illustration of where Excel is great for what it does in small cases, but as soon as you scale and go big, it starts to reach its limitations. So for LOIAC, the solution that we've implemented needs to collect application forms online. We need to create a whole series of surveys and questionnaires which we need to collect the data on at regular intervals. And we need to allow the beneficiaries to provide feedback at any time. The application forms will be online. The surveys and questionnaires, we needed to be able to connect either a laptop in the office, or we needed our supervisors, these are the volunteers, to be able to collect data at the customer site. So whenever they go on a visit or committee meetings, they can collect data there. And that needs to be done whether there's a mobile signal or internet signal or not. So these devices need to work offline. And we also invite the students to provide their feedback, either through SMS or by email. And LOIAC has selected Improved as the platform in order to use to allow all these different data collection mechanisms to feed into the same place, in the same database, from which they can then share, manage, count, analyze and report on things. So just to give you an idea of what you can do in Improved, is on the left, the blue looking screenshot. This is Improved. You design a form or a questionnaire once in Improved, and then you can deploy it where you want to, either online, as you can see on the left. The bottom right is a screenshot from an iPad using the offline version. You'll notice that the forms are identical. And then top right is a screenshot from my Android phone showing exactly the same form. So you can create the form once and deploy it where you need to. Improved also offers the data analysis part of the M&E system. So it not only collects the data and puts it into a database, it also allows you to do some analyses on that. So on the right, we've got a dashboard. It's an example dashboard. The dials and charts that you can see are point-and-click configuration within Improved, but you can then share those charts on other web pages. For instance, you could put them onto a Facebook page if you wanted to share the information with your funders, or potentially you could create one for a particular beneficiary and they could put that on their individual Facebook page. They see live data. Also on the dashboard is a word cloud. That's been generated from the textual feedback from the students, so sent in by SMS or email. And we can generate a word cloud which shows the most often used words. We can also do some analysis on the words to get a sense of what are the positive or negative words that are being used and see whether that changes before and after the summer program. We can also analyze the data and spot significant changes quite easily. That's just point and click, create a report, and it will tell you the difference between a pre-analysis, pre-assessment rather, and a post-assessment, and tell you the differences between the two. On the lower right is an M&E scorecard. Just as you might define in Excel, this one is live. The way you do it in Improved is you create an indicator and attach that to various data sets within the database. And that could be a single point of data. It could be the sum of some questions in a section on a particular form, or you can count the number of projects, count the number of beneficiaries. This is automatically updated, so this is live. This is a live way of seeing in traffic light format how your project is progressing. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, the data that you're collecting while you're doing M&E is also very useful for management information. And Improved provides you with the facilities to share this information with your project managers, with your funders directly, with whoever you need to, with different access permissions. So you could create and use it as a management information system to spot delivery problems. Finally, because the data is in a database, you can then export it to Excel, let's say, and then do your own analysis on that data, external from Improved. You could also export it in various formats, put it into other packages like SPSS if you wanted to do that analysis. I thought I'd just give you the website for more information on mProve, if that's useful. And finally, thank you very much.
So thank you, Chris, for a wonderful presentation, and thank you everyone who's watching or listening now. So Chris will be continuing to answer questions on the Marketplace forum, and the link is on the screen now. We'll also post the video recording of the webinar, and you can also download the presentation slides. So that's in the past events section of the Experts Corner, which is also on the Marketplace. And our next webinar will be in early August. We're planning a webinar with the winners of our What's Working competition, so you'll have a chance to meet, hear about their successful youth employment project, and ask any questions you have for them. So check back to the Experts Corner page for more details about that upcoming webinar. Thank you very much, and have a good day.